to the only fantasy football show that doesn't just guess when trying to put together running back rankings in fantasy football. In fact, today, we're going to let Vegas do a lot of the work. That's right. We're taking the same people who built billion-dollar casinos off of our bad parlays and using their lines to build some 2025 running back rankings. I mean, what could possibly go wrong in this scenario? So forget your buddy George who swears some rando is going to be due for a fantasy football explosion in your league group text. Because I'm going to need you to lock in, and I mean that seriously. Put a little lock emoji down below in the comment section because today we're turning Vegas lines into fantasy gold. What is going on, Headliner Nation? Hopefully everyone is doing well out there and you guys have been loving this series where we're taking Vegas lines and converting them to fantasy football rankings. We've already done this for the quarterback position and the wide receiver position, so if you haven't seen those shows yet, be sure to check them out on the channel after this one is over. But let's go ahead and get into today's show where we're going to be looking at the current consensus top 20 running backs in fantasy football. We're then going to show you their current Vegas lines. Well, most of them anyway. It's really easy to find lines for rushing yards and rushing touchdowns when it comes to the running back position. But the fantasy game is influenced heavy by those pass-catching running backs. Now, Vegas doesn't have a lot of receiving totals for a lot of running backs. So I went through the depths of the dark web and tried to find the most realistic projections that I could find for running back receiving totals and added them to this equation today. We will then take those lines and convert them into fantasy points. After that, I will re-rank them and we will see how Vegas sees things playing out compared to the consensus rankings. And let me let you in on a little secret. There is one running back that is barely inside the top 20 for the consensus, but Vegas has as a top 10 option. It's definitely a player you don't want to miss, so hang tight till the end. But speaking of secrets, if you need some top secret fantasy rankings to draft an absolute banger of a team in 2025, you need to get yourself a draft guide. It's going to have rankings, sleepers, breakouts, busts, injury analysis, O-line rankings, coaching changes, and so much more. There is already info up there on the draft guide site right now, but what makes it beautiful is it's web-based. We can add and update information all off season long, so you can get it now, follow along over the next few weeks, and right before your draft, when you log in, you know you have the most up-to-date information. That way, you're ready to dominate on draft day. Head over to tfhdraftguide.com and get yours right now. There's links down below in the description. If you don't get one, your league mates will, and you'll end up waking up with pink eye. Not something you want to get, and don't ask how you're going to get it. It's bad. Now, I have been setting like goals in all of my videos here as of late, and y'all have been straight killing them. Let's keep this train moving. If this video can get over 1,000 likes, I'll pick another random commenter from down below to win a free draft guide. So you know what to do. Hit the like button, leave a comment at some point in this video, and let's dive into the current consensus top 20 running backs. Now, as of right now, the current consensus goes like this. It's Saquon Barkley, followed by Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Ashton Genty, Derrick Henry, Devon Achane, Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, Bucky Irving, Kyron Williams, Chase Brown, Breece Hall, James Cook, Kenneth Walker, Alvin Kamara, Chuba Hubbard, Joe Mixon, James Conner, and David Montgomery. Now we'll go through this list one by one from the top down, and let me show you their current Vegas lines and their receiving projections. After we get through all 20 of them, I will then re-rank them based on what their half-point PPR point total would be given these lines and projections, and then we'll see how Vegas has these 20 ranked. So at the top we see Saquon Barkley, not a surprise to a lot of people after the year he had last year. He's penciled in for 40 receptions for 340 yards receiving and 2 receiving touchdowns. But Vegas has his rushing lines at 1,500 yards rushing and 11 touchdowns. At number 2, it's Bijan Robinson. He's projected for 60 receptions for 450 receiving yards and 2 receiving touchdowns as well. On the ground, 1,150 yards rushing and 10 rushing touchdowns. Next up is Jahmyr Gibbs. He's at 50 receptions for 500 yards and 3 receiving touchdowns, with an additional 1,050 yards on the ground and 10 rushing touchdowns as well. Now after Gibbs, we got the rookie stud Ashton Jeanty in Las Vegas. As of right now, he is projected for 60 receptions for 475 yards receiving and 2 receiving touchdowns. On the ground, pretty similar to Jahmyr Gibbs, 1,050 yards rushing, but in that Las Vegas offense, a little bit less touchdown upside, so he's sitting at 7 rushing touchdowns. Then we get Derrick Henry. We know he's not going to catch the ball a lot, so when it comes to receptions, it's sitting at 20 receptions for 175 yards receiving and 1 touchdown through the air. Now on the ground, that's where he makes his money, 1,375 yards rushing and a line of 13 rushing touchdowns, the highest we've seen so far in this video today. Now after him, we got De'Von Achane of Miami, and we know he is definitely tied to the health of Tua Tagovailoa, but as of right now, Tua is healthy, so look at the reception projection. 70 receptions, 560 yards for De'Von Achane, one of the highest receiving totals we are going to see in this top 20, but he also has 4 receiving touchdowns projected. On the ground, not as much, 875 yards rushing, 7 rushing touchdowns, still a super solid year there. Then we get Christian McCaffrey, and as of right now, he's projected for 55 catches, 500 yards receiving and 3 receiving touchdowns, with 950 yards rushing and 7 rushing touchdowns. You have to think that his usage may be a little bit lower this year to try to keep him healthy. How about Jonathan Taylor at number 8? He's projected for 20 receptions, 150 yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. Not a lot through the air, but on the ground, 1,250 yards and 9 touchdowns. Then we go down to number 9, Josh Jacobs in Green Bay. 35 catches for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air, and then on the ground, 1,050 yards and 9 touchdowns. Would be another super solid year for Josh Jacobs if he can attain those numbers. Then at number 10, second-year running back Bucky Irving in Tampa Bay. He's projected for 45 catches, 400 yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. But Vegas also sees him being another 1,000-yard rusher at 1,025 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground. Which brings us to number 11, Kyren Williams of the Rams, and we know he's not overly involved in the passing game. 30 receptions for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns projected on the year. And on the ground, another 1,000-yard season, 1,005 yards rushing and 11 rushing touchdowns. We know he gets a lot of goal line opportunities. At 12, it's Chase Brown. We called the breakout here last year, but can he repeat what he did last year? He's not going to catch people off guard this year. Highly involved in the pass catching game, 50 catches for 400 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns, to go along with 850 yards rushing and 5 rushing touchdowns. Personally, I think we could see more than 5 rushing touchdowns, but that's where Vegas has him right now. At 12, it's Breece Hall of the Jets. 50 receptions, 450 yards, and 2 touchdowns there for him, to go along with 850 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns. A super solid year. I would love to get that from Breece Hall, because we already know this backfield is going to be a little bit more committee-based. Which brings us down to number 14 is James Cook of Buffalo. 35 catches, 285 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns through the air, to go along with 950 yards on the ground and 9 rushing touchdowns. Obviously, there's going to be that regression in the touchdown category this year, but that doesn't mean that James Cook still can't flirt with being a top 12 running back. How about at 15? It's Kenneth Walker in Seattle. 45 catches, 350 yards receiving, and 1 touchdown through the air is the projection for him. And then Vegas has his rushing total at only 875 yards and 6 rushing touchdowns. Maybe they're expecting a little bit more Zach Charbonnet in 2025. How about number 16? It's Alvin Kamara of New Orleans, one of the most underrated running backs in my opinion this year. He's penciled in for 70 receptions, 570 yards receiving, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Then on the ground, Vegas only has him at 900 yards rushing and 6 rushing touchdowns. We've seen this guy get 6 touchdowns in a game before, so I would maybe want to bet the over on the touchdowns there for Alvin Kamara. How about at 17? It's Chuba Hubbard in Carolina. He's penciled in for 40 receptions, 225 yards receiving, and 1 receiving touchdown, to go along with 900 yards rushing and 8 rushing touchdowns. Then we get Joe Mixon at 18 in Houston. 35 catches for 300 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns, only 880 yards rushing and 8 touchdowns. They expect Nick Chubb to have a role in this offense at some point, with that rushing total only at 880. Then we get James Conner at 19. He's got 40 receptions for 375 yards and 1 receiving touchdown to go along with 900 yards on the ground and 7 rushing touchdowns. That's over 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns. I'll take it from James Conner. And then lastly, at number 20, right now is David Montgomery of the Detroit Lions. We know he's not huge in the reception game. That's more Jahmyr Gibbs' role. But Montgomery's still projected for 30 catches, 275 yards, but no receiving touchdowns. On the ground, only 860 yards, but 10. A double-digit touchdown line once again this year for David Montgomery, and honestly, it's not that crazy to expect. So there you have all the projections for the top 20 consensus running backs. But like I said, we converted all of that to half PPR points. If we do that and then re-rank the list, we're going to see how Vegas sees things, and this is how it looked. And the first thing I noticed is number 1, 2, and 3 match. The consensus and Vegas agree. Saquon Barkley at RB1, Bijan Robinson at number 2, and Jahmyr Gibbs at number 3. But then we get a little discrepancy at number 4, Derrick Henry, the consensus RB5, Vegas has as the RB4. After him, Devon Achane. He was the consensus RB6, but the Vegas RB5, 1 spot higher for him as well. And then we get to the rookie Ashton Jeanty, the consensus RB4, the Vegas RB6, 2 spots lower. And personally, I love that spot right there for Jeanty. RB6 feels a lot better to me than RB4. Then we get Christian McCaffrey. The consensus and Vegas agree at the RB7 spot. Then we get Breece Hall. The consensus RB13, but the Vegas RB8, 5 spots higher for Breece Hall. And then look at Alvin Kamara. The consensus RB16, yet the Vegas RB9, 7 spots higher than the consensus. That is a huge jump for Alvin Kamara. Then we get Josh Jacobs, the consensus RB9, and the Vegas RB10, only 1 spot lower. After him, it's Kyren Williams of the Rams, and here, once again, the consensus and Vegas agree at the RB11. Then we move down to Bucky Irving. He was the consensus RB10, but the Vegas RB12, 2 spots lower, but still a top 12 running back in fantasy football. Then Jonathan Taylor. He was the consensus RB8. Vegas isn't buying it. He's the RB13, 5 spots lower. Now after him, James Cook, they agree, the consensus in Vegas here. James Cook sitting at RB14. Then we get Joe Mixon, the consensus RB18, the Vegas RB15. He's 3 spots higher. Then we get James Conner, the consensus RB19, the Vegas RB16, 3 spots higher for him as well. How about Chase Brown? Well, he's the consensus RB12, but Vegas isn't buying it either. He's their RB17 overall, 5 spots lower. We then get David Montgomery, the consensus RB20, the Vegas RB18, so he's jumped 2 spots higher, followed by Kenneth Walker at the consensus RB15, but the Vegas RB19, 4 spots lower. And then we round out the top 20 with Chuba Hubbard. He was the consensus RB17, but the Vegas RB20, 3 spots lower. Does Vegas expect a little bit more this year from Rico Dowdle, and did that really limit him in some of these categories? So as we look at these rankings overall, the biggest difference is Breece Hall, Alvin Kamara, Jonathan Taylor, and Chase Brown. All of them had at least a 5-spot difference from consensus to Vegas. So who has it closer? Let's start off with Breece Hall. He's fully capable, but A, it's the Jets, and B, with a running quarterback like Justin Fields and a split backfield that they've already said they're going to use, I kind of tend to side with the consensus more so on this one, and I think he's closer to the RB13 than he is to the RB8. How about Alvin Kamara? I side with Vegas 1000%. I have been preaching Kamara all offseason and talking about the value he has in 2025. There is no capable quarterback in New Orleans. They are going to run the ball a lot, and they're going to get a lot of check down opportunities to the running back position every single week. Kamara could feast this season, in my opinion, closer to RB9 than RB16. How about Jonathan Taylor? Honestly, there is just so much riding on who the quarterback is going to be. Is it going to be Daniel Jones? Is he actually good now? Or is he still the guy that looks like he munched on a Crayola or 2 at one point in his life? Because this passing offense has a ton of pass-catching weapons. If Daniel Jones starts to move the ball down the field through the air with any success, I kind of like where the consensus has Jonathan Taylor. Now, if it's Anthony Richardson, I think we could get to a spot where defenses just stack the box and try to force Anthony Richardson to beat them through the air, and that would make Vegas a little bit closer in their projection. Really curious to see who starts there to start the 2025 season. Now, lastly, Chase Brown. And for him, I think it's all about them TDs. I think the yardage and reception lines are solid. 7 touchdowns overall, though, does seem kind of low for me. Just 2 more touchdowns and 100 more total yards, and the guy is right back up inside the top 10. Something I definitely think he's capable of, but it's not a given. I really think the biggest takeaway in this video, though, has to be Alvin Kamara. Almost every metric-based show that we have posted this entire offseason has shown Alvin Kamara being an absolute steal at his current draft value. I am firmly on the Kamara bandwagon in 2025. Who's with me?
Analytics, off the chain, all the channels, not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headline Nation, we running the game.